It's not the solitude of being out here next to the Nicolet National Forest, but it's the tranquility that drew them out here, the wildlife, just the sounds of the forest, the bird life. And by the 1970s, the late 1970s, early 80s, eagles were making a dramatic comeback in the Northwoods. And there were eagles nesting not far from here. So they were regularly seeing bald eagles, which was a big highlight, of the day for my mother anytime she saw an eagle. For me, the big reason why I wanted to maintain that property is one unit, not subdivided for development, was my concern for the springs and the headwater ponds of Spring Meadow Creek. I didn't want the chance of runoff, and more than a third of the property drains directly to this swamp and those headwater ponds not far from here. And so that was one of my major reasons for encouraging my brothers and sisters to put this place under easement to protect that headwaters of Spring Meadow Creek. And so this is one corner of our property, much different from the white pine and oak and maple forest up on top of the hills, and then much of our property, as it flows into the headwater springs, goes through this black spruce swamp. I think it'll benefit the next generation, whether that's my daughter Lily or my brother's son Andrew, because they will have this access, not only to this variety of plant communities and topography here, and direct access to the headwater springs and those spring ponds, but they'll have access to this larger Northwoods community. They don't have to come up here as visitors or as tourists. They're a part of the community because they will own this property. And also because it gives them, I think, continuity with previous generations of the family, going back to my parents and their use of the property. And for my daughter, I know that that's significant. She often talks about her memories of her grandfather doing things with her on this property or up in this area, whether it's hiking along a stream somewhere or picking blueberries together. If you're not on a lake or a river like this parcel out in the forest, you know what is unique about it. And one of the things is the large piece of this property that drains the surface drainage directly to the headwaters, springs and ponds of a trout stream, Spring Meadow Creek. That deserves protection. You know in your heart that if something is worth saving, if you wanted it that way, and you cherished and took advantage of that access to whatever those values were, then I think you already have a pretty good understanding of why you should at least consider giving a conservation easement to the Northwoods Land Trust. This land trust and others make a big difference on the larger scale, on the landscape, because all the little dots on the map at your office fill in areas between the state and federal ownership and the county ownership. For whatever various reasons, those big forests, were set up, were established. Now we have a lot of private ownership of lakeshore and riverbank properties, a lot of private ownership and small pieces. I'm not talking about industrial forests, but private ownership of forests. We can each do our part to keep private resources kind of on a scale that benefit nearby or adjoining environments. and plant communities. Individual properties become corridors for wildlife, but also corridors for plants to move around, whether that's in response, to climate change or in response to some other interference. These private properties under easement have kind of valuable role to play on the landscape and in the environment.